need a better thing, I must say, to hold up books than the Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire. Sort of silly. Box set. It's also like really awkward. It's up here, right? There's nothing to rest my hand on. But it works for you all. So, another candle there. Seems fun. So, I've already done like the initial readings, but I might as well just read it again, since not many people were around for my first attempted foray into the twins by Bukowski. And that is, it's kind of important, right? To hear the poem. And this one is pretty brutal. The twins. He hinted at times that I was a bastard, and I told him to listen to Brahms, and I told him to learn to paint and drink and not be dominated by women and dollars. But he screamed at me, "For Christ's sake, remember your mother, remember your country. You'll kill us all." I moved through my father's house, on which he owed $8,000 after 20 years on the same job, and look at his dead shoes. The way his feet curled the leather as if he was angrily planting roses. And he was. And I look at his dead cigarette. His last cigarette. And the last bed he slept in that night, and I feel I should remake it, but I can't. For a father is always your master, even when he's gone. I guess these things have happened time and time again, but I can't help thinking, to die on a kitchen floor at 7 o'clock in the morning while other people are frying eggs is not so rough. Unless it happens to you. I go outside and pick an orange and peel back the bright skin. Things are still living. The grass is growing quite well. The sun sends down its rays, circled by a Russian satellite. A dog barks senselessly somewhere. The neighbors peek behind blinds. I'm a stranger here and have been, I suppose, somewhat the rogue. And I have no doubt he painted me quite well. The old boy and I fought like mountain lions. And they say he left it all to some woman in Duarte. But I don't give a damn, she can have it. He was my old man. And he died. Inside, I try on a light blue suit. Much better than anything I have ever worn. And I flap the arms like a scarecrow in the wind, but it's no good. I can't keep him alive. No matter how much we hated each other. We looked exactly alike. We could have been twins. The old man and I, that's what they said. He had bulbs on the screen, ready for planting, while I was lying with a whore from 3rd Street. Very well. Grant us this moment, standing before a mirror, in my dead father's suit, waiting also to die. Something that I just thought of is that this very kind of, it flows well from the previous poem, The Day I Kicked a Bankroll Out My Window. Because this is talking about a woman who's like wealthy, sort of waiting for inheritance, and it's better than waiting for death and oil and shooting wild turkey and waiting for the world to begin. And then now he also talks about how he is someone waiting for death. So I think that's kind of cool. I should get one of those tray desk things that people have in bed to put it on. That's pretty smart. I feel like I have one somewhere, and I don't know where it is right now, and I'm not gonna go scour my room because I spend enough time on this stream like running around my room looking for things. So, The Twins is a very heavy poem about your father being dead, which is super fun and light and awesome, of course. And I think I want to start by talking about maybe tension. Tension is a big concept in art. I have a book and I'm gonna go run around my room looking for something. So, the book is called The Art of Interpretation by Pablo Casals. He's a cellist, right? Sorry, it's not by Casals. It's a biography. It's not an autobiography. Casals and the Art of Interpretation, right? My teacher recommended that I read this book when I was in high school before like studying music, right? Those were a lot of ideas of my understanding of tension and release come from. Casals talked about rainbows. Talked about how music would start low, rise in tension, and then come back down and sort of resolve, right? So I think it might be the first principle. I'm not sure, but this is sort of unrelated. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find anything in here, but the idea of tension in art is absolutely crucial, because if you don't have tension is what sort of makes us, scrunch up our shoulders, feel like something is off or wanting to move, right? And then when we release, that is how we get that great feeling of like satisfaction out of a piece of music or a piece of art. And that's super important. And I think I want to talk about this in Bukowski, the idea of tension in art. Because it's something that we should learn how to play with and learn how to analyze and feel. So Casals, I couldn't find an example in the book, but he talks about playing in rainbows. And this can be applied to all sorts of things with like pitch and and dynamic, right? Quiet, loud, quiet, or inverted. But we start in this sort of calm place, and then we get tension, and then we release. That's like the fundamental structure of art. Of course, we can play with it. We can start tense. But this is the 5-act play. We introduce, we rising action, we climax the most tension, and then we resolve in denouement, right? We go through this rainbow. It's the hero's journey. We start calm, a call to action. Luke Skywalker on whatever planet he lives on. Tatooine? And then something happens, and then things get a little more tense, and now Luke Skywalker has a reason to go, and then he takes his journey and has this big climactic whatever. I don't really know the story very well. And then it releases down, right? That's the 5-act play. Wait, we get to submit poems? Yeah. So put in the command. So if you go here, you can send poems for me to read, and I will analyze them. I did that last stream. I don't think you were there yet. But if you have anything you have recommended of like a poet who's published that's easy for me to find, or that you have a copy or a scan of, you can send that to me. Or if you have an original, send it to me, and then I'll analyze it, put it on YouTube if you want, my analysis, and sort of make this continuing series of the poets of Twitch. Right now we're just analyzing Bukowski, but yes, if you want to submit anything, submit, right? And I'll get to it when you are in chat on a future stream, or this stream. But I have a lot for this stream, it seems. That being said, tension and release. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be talking about this in the actual structure of the poem. I mean, potentially yes, but I mean, there's actually very good tension and release in this stanza. But I just want to talk about also the tension between Bukowski and his father, and the way that it also is released. So, he hinted at times, you know what we're going to do? I have a new color scheme for today. It can be fun to do colors. So we're going to do blue is release. Sorry, you can't see that. I just wrote release. And red is tension. Right? Easy enough. And we're going to go through, and as a sort of exercise, and exercises are good. I mean, in a sense, I'm doing this because this is just a way that I can analyze. It's not even like no one's making me do this, but I think it's a good exercise. Anything that feels tense, we're using red. Anything that feels blue, release, we're using blue. So he hinted at times that I was a bastard, and I told him to listen to Brahms and learn to paint and drink and not be dominated by women and dollars. He screamed at me. This whole thing is tense. So, of course, the structure is great, and then as soon as we have a structure, we can subvert it, right? I just told you all about how we start calm, we get tense, and then we release, and then I showed you something that starts with tension. But sometimes in writing, you can call that a hot start. More like in a narrative, movie type thing. You would start with some heavy amount of action. Maybe a D&D campaign, I start with them being attacked immediately, right? So that's what Bukowski's doing. He doesn't need to follow the structure because he's Bukowski. And then I move through my father's house, on which he owed $8,000 after 20 years on the same job. I'm calling this release because it's sort of humorous, the way I read that. We're talking about all of this stuff, and then it's like, on which he owed $8,000. Just sort of this random tidbit, anecdotal piece of information that seems to stick out differently. And that can be a release, in a sense, from the intensity of this. All of this is relative. What is tense and what is release? Right? What is tension and what is release? Because we can have a poem that's entirely full of tension, and this is a tense line, on which he owed $8,000 in 20 years on the same job. If we put it in a poem where that is the only thing indicating that the father is dead. However, this is very much a release compared to You'll Kill Us All and talking about some of the next stuff in this stanza. Also, I move through. It feels very, to me, ethereal. This idea of just like, I'm moving through this house. I'm not walking, I'm not stepping. It's sort of an abstract thing. And look at his dead shoes. The way his feet curled the leather, as if he was angrily planting roses. This sticks out in a very interesting way. The idea of angrily planting something, because planting plants is peaceful. But then we say, and he was. Oftentimes questions are tense. As if he was angrily planting roses. Doesn't tell us that he was. It just says that he was maybe doing this very sort of abstract, almost confusing description of life, right? And he was. That is a release. This line is tension and release. Interestingly, not the exact structure. No, this entire line. I move through my father's house, calm, on which he owed $8,000 after 20 years on the same job. Still calm, but more tense. And look at his dead shoes. Tension, the way his feet curled the leather. As if he was angrily planting roses. And he was. You know, that is a cadence. That is something nice. And then, I mean, we're doing this in major. And then we resolve, right? Of course, if we did, I don't know, it's not great. We start out with, like, our dad being dead. And then we go to but it still feels like a resolution. When we get to and he was, it's stable. Right. My music theory is not great. I probably played a wrong chord there, but we feel when we return to the first chord, it's where we're meant to sit and rest. So, that's a beautiful example, right? And then we do it again. And I look at his dead cigarette. His last cigarette and the last bed he slept in that night. And I feel I should remake it. So there we get tension. Dead cigarette. Last cigarette. And then we feel like we should remake it. But again, we haven't done it yet. We have nothing conclusive here. So there's still a little bit of tension. And then we go right back into the tension. But I can't, which is a release in a sense. For a father is always your master even when he is gone. I guess these things have happened time and time again, but I can't help thinking, To die on a kitchen floor at 7 o'clock in the morning while other people are frying eggs is not so rough. Release. Unless it happens to you. Tension. This poem is not happy, right? So to resolve in a nice way at the end wouldn't be fitting. And as we map out these sort of arcs of tension and release, we also notice new things potentially. I noticed that "but I can't" felt like a resolution in the same way as "and he was," because we have a hypothetical, as if he was angrily planting roses. I feel I should make it, but I can't, and he was. These are a pullback of release, because we have this open hypothetical, and then we resolve it. And then we jump back into tension, open another hypothetical, resolve it. So in that sense, this stanza, although it feels like we're meandering through a house, is very literarily structured. Even this. Thinking to die is not so rough, unless it happens to you. Hypothetical, sort of, in our thought, and then giving this strong statement on that. And this is sort of a more, I guess this is maybe helpful to anyone who feels like they want more structure, because yesterday on stream I analyzed a poem and I was very non-structured about it. I just read it a bunch of times, started trying to synthesize ideas, pull things together, and bring meaning in through any word, jumping around randomly. This method of an analysis, we can call it, tension release, or tension analysis, maybe. I don't know if these are real terms that a teacher would use, but they feel real, right? It's a more structured thing. We can say, what is this line doing? Tension. What is this line doing? Increasing that tension, lowering that tension, releasing all the tension, being a peak of tension. Tension has stopped sounding like a word to me, but it's another approach, right? Which I didn't even know I was going to talk about this, but sometimes, maybe this is why I'm doing it, when we have a poem that is so brutally emotional, like the twins, giving ourselves some structure to sort of hide in a sense, to use this structure as a way to engage with the poem without actually just feeling every word over and over and over again, can help us. Because if I just kept jumping around to all of the impactful moments in this poem, I would start crying. That's basically what I did a few days ago. Because it's hard to read. It's just a hard poem. So, we take more structure. And I have no idea if this is going to hold up as we go to the next stanza. I go outside and pick an orange and peel back the bright skin. Nature is very often a point of release. There's a lot of so much of nature is relaxing and calming and beautiful. Nature can also be used elsewise as a very tense thing, the brutality of nature, natural disaster, but very often nature is peaceful. That's a note, I guess, if we want to tie in the idea of how common literary metaphor, and that is to say, things that are normally used to represent things. Nature is usually peaceful. Food is maybe usually communal and about family, often. These kinds of things. Often this is release. Often this is tension. Can you give you a good starting point if you don't want to jump in and immediately say, how is this making me feel in the moment? and it's just a good shorthand. So, picking oranges and peeling back the skin, very much a release. Things are still living. The grass is growing well. The sun sends down rays circled by a Russian satellite. Now, this feels tense to me, especially if we're in America in, like, the 60s or 70s, and we're Charles Bukowski, and it's, like, the Red Scare. Historical context, right? Saying Russian is going to instill some tension. A dog barks senselessly. That's a little off-putting. You know, dogs barking, they're angry, they're whatever. The neighbors peek behind the blinds. Now we're getting, like, really tense. Looking at you. Fear. Peeking behind the blinds is an action of fear. Who is this person? What is going on? And then we answer that question. I am a stranger here, and I have been somewhat the rogue. I have no doubt he painted me quite well. Now we're sort of releasing, saying, why are they looking at me like that? The old boy and I fought like mountain lions. That's both attention, telling, informing about the father, but it's also release. It's giving information. And knowing things is often a release. One of the best parts of horror as a genre is not knowing. Not knowing. Going down into the dark basement and having no idea what is there. If we're going as far as Lovecraft, having no conceptual idea of the thing in front of me because it is so horrifying. And then it all culminates to like a big scare if we're in film, right? However, then we actually get some release because we know we get scared in a moment, but it's like you can kind of then, right? Sometimes we laugh at horror movies and we think it's kind of silly when like we just have this killer chasing a person around. Like the scene after the big scare can be very like the least scary thing in the movie. It can still be energetic and tense, but we know now, so we're a little less scared. Nico, oh wow. Is that referring to my insights on this or something else? Horror is not knowing though. And so is tension, right? Horror is just a big version of tension. Notice how we can take this idea of tension and release and apply it to, like, everything. And that's why it's a useful tool sometimes in your, I guess, like, toolbox of analysis. I mean, I started out literally by pulling out a book about a cellist and talking about how this book references tension and release. I talked about music. I talked about film. I talked about literature. The 5-act play, Shakespeare, the hero's journey. That's so much of literature. That's Tolkien. That's Star Wars. Whatever, right? And you can even talk about tension and release in visual art, a painting, where your eyes land initially, and then where they move and find tension in the painting and where they want to go back to for some amount of groundedness and comfort. That's composition in terms of tension and release. So it's useful sometimes if you want to organize your ideas. It can be very useful in like abstract things or just stuff that can be very intense, which maybe it's just because I find abstraction very intense, but continuing. The neighbors peek behind the blinds. I'm a stranger here, and I have been, I suppose, somewhat the rogue. And I have no doubt he painted me quite well. The old boy and I fought like mountain lions, and they say he left it all to some woman in Duarte, but I don't give a damn. She can have it. That's a line of both tension and release. She can have it. I'm not worried about the things. It's okay. It's set in stone. There is no not knowing here. But you also have this tension of this woman in Duarte who I don't know, and just the sort of the fact of that, some woman. He was my old man. And he died. Right? Again, it's a tense line still. But it's also saying that the most important thing here is not that he's not leaving things for me. The issue is not any of what he saw before, any of the shoes, the cigarette, the bed. He died, and that is what Bukowski is focusing on here. He is just sad that his old man is dead. Right? Which is kind of, in a sense, a release from the drama of it all. Bukowski, hold on. Bukowski often talks about, trying to get this focused, talks about money and sort of the drama of people and lives. And here, all he cares about right now is just, my dad died. And in that sense, this is a release. Which is, like, hard. That's the difficult thing about grief, right? There's a release to it. And there's so much tension. Inside, I try on a light blue suit. It matches the color of the pen I'm using for release. Because that's a calming color. If we said a black suit, would that be more tense? I think so. Just a thought. Much better than anything I have ever worn. Again, nice release. There's comfort here. I flap my arms like a scarecrow in the wind. Now there's motion. But it's no good. Now there's emotion. More tension. I can't keep him alive. Tension no matter how much we hated each other. Tension. We looked exactly alike. We could have been twins. The old man and I, that's what they said. He had his bulbs on the screen, ready for planting, while I was lying with a whore from 3rd Street. Very well. Grant us this moment, standing before the mirror, in my dead father's suit. Waiting also to die. Putting both colors here, because I'm really not sure what I think about the last line. And that's where we're going to do more analysis. Is sometimes you don't know if something feels tense or releaseful upon reading it. There's tension here, the idea that Bukowski is waiting to die. That is not a good thing, that is not a pleasant thing. However, he's also waiting to die. He's like his father. He's looking in the mirror. There's connection. They're twins. This is a point of him feeling probably profoundly and deeply connected to his father. Something that he has not always had. We started very much with deep tension. He hinted at times I was a bastard. I mean, talk about a lack of connection to a parent. A bastard. I told him to listen to Brahms and learn to paint and drink. Bukowski's an artist, and not be dominated by women and dollars. His father is interested in business, and those sort of very non-Bukowski things, right? And that's a very classic tension, the artists and their parents, right? And then he screamed at me, for Christ's sake, remember your mother. So she's dead. Remember your country, you'll kill us all. They were in Germany before the war. before World War II, Bukowski ended up leaving for America. But when you're an artist and an idealist and someone who wants to paint and drink and listen to Brahms, although, like, the Nazis did like classical music. I know Wagner was their favorite, but not sure what they thought of Brahms. But you'll kill us all at the start of the poem. I mean, we're starting with death, right? Tension. And then, honestly, in comparison, everything in between is kind of a release from this, right? I mean, this is very tense. This might get as tense as the first stanza, but nothing here is getting more tense than the beginning. And as we move away from it, we get more release. Even this, it's talking about how much they hate each other, but it's saying how he wished he could keep him alive, and how they looked alike, and how they're similar. And usually, saying that two people look alike is not usually just saying that they looked alike. It's usually a metaphor. Saying that they were alike, you know? Bukowski was laying on the floor from 3rd Street. He told his father to not be obsessed with women. They were probably obsessed with women in very different ways. Bukowski was this womanizing, brothel-frequenting, to-marriage, not support his daughter type of obsessed with women. We don't know about his father, but still, we're similar. And we're standing in the mirror, and maybe I'm here, and my father is also here as the suit. And I'm also waiting to die. Right? And it's called The Twins, right? This poem. More than anything, this is about, I think, how we get from here, tension and bastard and you'll kill us all and screaming at each other, and reaching that point of being the same and acknowledging that. And unfortunately, the tension maybe and the difficulty of grief and mourning is that he's only realizing this now that his dad is dead. And maybe he has realized it to some degree before, but this poem is only happening after death. He's only getting these insights now. And it's now that he can't keep him alive, that he's wearing his suit, that he's trying to flap the arms in the wind and get the suit to have some amount of life in it now. Which is difficult. Does anyone in chat offhand know the 5 stages of grief? I don't know what order they go in. But the end feels like acceptance to me, and the start feels a lot like anger. And in a sense, wanting to fix the bed is a bit like denial, and then he processes that. And then, but I don't know the rest. Denial, anger, there's like maybe despair, depression. Okay, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Okay, and not everyone goes through these in the same order, I feel like, but there's anger. The first thing he remembers about his father is being yelled at. There is bargaining in the trying to get his father to still be alive. There is depression. This really feels like the depression. Remembering that the father is always your master, looking at his dead everything. And, This feels kind of like a slight just release from that. There might be some denial here in not really caring about the money and all that, but there's denial in flapping the wings and bargaining and flapping the wings and saying, like, keeping this person alive. And then accepting that we have been granted this moment, standing in the mirror in the suit, and I'm waiting to die, which in a sense is that connection, but I feel this ending it's not positive, but it's about connection and realizing the closeness to his father, I think. Yeah, thank you all for the 5 stages of grief. And hello, Nico. Glad you're back. And he goes through them in sort of an interesting order, but it feels like they're all there, right? And to me, I think acceptance is here. And part of that is because we start at the point of maximum tension. And you know, this is where that analysis is helping us. We start with the most tension, and we go down, and then we start, I'll use purple as a mix, and things start to get a little bit more relaxed, right? And things, you know, get really quite relaxed toward the end when we're talking about focus. I'm trying. Okay. When we get to the end and we have this profound sense of relief in the suit, and then, you know, the last line is maybe to say that, you know, we're never going to be fully released from this. He's reminded of his mortality. He's also waiting to die. But it's about as much release as it feels like somebody like Bukowski can write in a poem. So, that's how I would like to interpret it. I would like to, through this sort of mapping of tension and release, understand this poem as, understand the twins as something deeply cathartic and releasing and connecting to his father. With that, I'm going to read it again. If anyone else has other interpretations, I mean, I guess I didn't sort of invite you all to do this kind of thing along with me, but if you have any other ideas, let me know. Think about that while I read again. He hinted at times that I was a bastard, and I told him, listen to Brahms. And I told him, learn to paint and drink and not be dominated by women and dollars. But he screamed at me, for Christ's sake, remember your mother, remember your country. You'll kill us all. I moved through my father's house, on which he owed $8,000 after 20 years on the same job. And look at his dead shoes, and the way his feet curled the leather as if he was angrily planting roses. And he was. And I look at his dead cigarette, his last cigarette, and the last bed he slept in that night, and I feel I should remake it. But I can't, for a father is always your master, even when he's gone. I guess these things have happened time and time again, but I can't help thinking to die on a kitchen floor at 7 o'clock in the morning while other people are frying eggs is not so rough. Unless it happens to you. I go outside and pick an orange and peel back the bright skin. Things are still living, the grass is growing quite well. The sun sends down its rays, circled by a Russian satellite. A dog barks senselessly somewhere, and the neighbors peek behind blinds. I am a stranger here. And I have been, I suppose, somewhat the rogue. And I have no doubt he painted me quite well. The old boy and I fought like mountain lions. And they say he left it all to some woman in Duarte, but I don't give a damn, she can have it. He was my old man. And he died. Inside, I try on a blue suit, much better than anything I have ever worn, and I flap the arms like a scarecrow in the wind, but it's no good. I can't keep him alive, no matter how much we hated each other. We looked exactly alike. We could have been twins, the old man and I. That's what they said. He had bulbs on the screen ready for planting, while I was lying with some whore from 3rd Street. Very well. Grant us this moment, standing before a mirror in my dead father's suit, waiting also to die.